Well, hello everyone. Welcome to our um, International Teaching and Global Leadership class preview webinar. Today's class is going to go through a little preview of our language and culture and TEFL course. We are so excited that you're here to join us. My name is Serena Stewart, and I'm Associate Director of Admissions. And this is the very last class in ITGL Class Preview Week. So ITGL Class Preview Week has been amazing, but class is really just one small portion of the student experience that you are going to have as a graduate student. If you look on your screen, you'll see a bunch of different photos of ITGL students engaging in activities outside of class. You'll see orientation activities, hackathons, conferences that they presented at, and of course, the culmination of graduation. So, this is just a little sample of life outside of the classroom when you're an ITGL student. Then today's session is the final course in class preview week. If you missed the classes that we did Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, we did record those courses for you. And those recordings will be featured on the SOE YouTube channel page. So you'll be able next week to go onto our YouTube channel and find those recordings to see a little bit deeper into some of the other courses in the ITGL program. In some of the other webinars you may have attended, we've gone a little bit deeper into the ITGL program, but I wanted to give you just a brief overview of the major components that make up the core curriculum of ITGL. So first and foremost, there's the ITGL core courses. Those courses are across different subjects in education and leadership, policy, global trends that really every international expert in education should know. So those courses cover that aspect for you. And then we have the focus area courses. Typically, those focus area courses are 3 to 5 courses that you take in addition to the ITGL core courses, and they dive a little bit deeper into your chosen focus area. And then for that hands-on experiential learning, we have applied experiences that we called extended learning here in the ITGL program. So students are engaged in that, so that way they're focusing their coursework or they're taking their coursework and their focus area and they're applying it in the real world. So that is their real world experience. And then it all culminates in a portfolio that students have to show the progress and what they learned throughout the ITGL program.
And thank you, Serena, for that great overview of our ITGL program. So welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for joining this class preview webinar. I am really glad that you're here. To make it really interactive, if you want to put anything in the chat, like where you are from, where you are listening from, that would be great. And then throughout the webinar, I might also have questions posted for our guest students here, but also for all of you on the webinar, on the call. So feel free to leave anything in the chat. So really, before diving to our class preview today, I want to talk a little bit about myself. So my name is Dr. Yeshen. I am currently an assistant professor in the ITGL, Johns Hopkins University with the ITGL program. I'm also the faculty advisor for the TEFL focus area. So my journey really started as a second grade teacher. So you can see on the top left corner, that was me. It's over a decade ago. I was teaching in Delaware, which is in a public elementary school. I was teaching second graders. This was our celebration of the Lunar New Year, Spring Festival. So I was teaching them how to make dumplings. That was a great experience. But with that experience, right? So with working with children, that really inspired me to pursue my PhD to understand more about how do we better serve those students and how do really students learn different languages. So I got my PhD in education from University of Delaware. After COVID, after two kids, after everything else, ups and downs, I finally got my PhD, and then I went to the Ohio State University for my postdoc in both education and psychology. And then I became a professor, right? So on the bottom picture, the left picture, you see that I was teaching. Um, I was surrounded with students from around the globe, around the world. So I was very fortunate to teach those students, second language acquisition theories. We dive deep into those theories and how do we make that into practices as well. So you can see the bottom right two pictures. These were our current cohort of TEFL students. And I was also very, very fortunate to have the best cohort of students here. And teaching them, I really had fun. And those pictures were taken when we were having the language acquisition in TEFL class. And today I'll dive deep into the language and culture in TEFL, which we are currently taking and having right now. So I also wanted to talk a little bit or showcase our lab as well. So I am also the director of the MINT laboratory, and we are really on a mission to advancing the frontiers of multilingual children's learning education. And we use innovative research methods, right? And really interdisciplinary research methods too. And on the picture are some members of in my lab. I'm fortunate to have Minxin Ling, who is working in my lab with me today as well. Um, yeah, so in my lab, we are really focusing on multitudes of projects right now. We have projects which is really at the beginning stage of the research process, which is represented here, which is the language learning project. This was a founded project by Language Learning Journal, and we are looking at how different methods of writing, in Chinese, we have handwriting and we also have typewriting, but typewriting and handwriting are very different in Chinese compared to English. So we want to figure out how these two different methods, different writing methods related to children's English and Chinese word reading. So we are focusing on Chinese, English, bilingual children here. We also have some projects which is really at the later stage of the research process, like the transfer integration project here. We are currently at the data entry stage. So after the data entry, the students are really, lab members in my lab are really diligently working on data entry on that project. And after that is done, we kind of have data cleaning and start data analysis and publication. And we also have some other projects like the Read and Math Network project, which is funded by the ARA and SF grant. We are looking at how your brain networks, right? So like the neuroimaging part, how your reading brain and math brain, so like the overlap, and then the unique contribution of these networks, how that contributes to children's academic achievement in both English reading and math achievements. We have so many other projects. I'm not going into details. So they're all on our Mint Lab website if you're interested to check them out. Yeah, so here is what we'll do today. So first, I'll give you a course preview or overview of language and culture in TEFL. So what the course is about, what you'll learn, and how it connects to real teaching situations in the classroom. And second, we'll do a short mini lesson on culture. And I'm very fortunate to have guest students joining us today on that part too. So you can experience the kind of activities and thinking we're using the course. And this will be interactive, so feel free to participate in the chat. And third, so right now we'll go over some of the admission information. All right. So here I am really highlighting the big idea that drives the whole course, which is understanding the cultural underpinnings of global communication. So at the center, you will see this overlap between two areas, right? So on the left is language learning and communication. So this is what we usually focus on TEFL, such as grammar, vocabulary, skills, interaction, and how learners actually use English to achieve their purposes. So on the right is intercultural knowledge, awareness, and skills. So in other words, how people's expectations, values, identities, and social norms shape what they mean and how they interpret others. So the key point here is the overlap. The communication isn't just about the language accuracy and grammar, right? It's also about interpretation. So what counts as polite, direct, respectful, confident, appropriate, right? Or even normal can vary a lot across contexts and cultures. So the core focus here and of the course, right, is taking a critical, sociocultural, and functional view of culture's role in teaching English, whether you're teaching English as a second language or foreign language or using English as the lingua franca. An investigation we do is practical. So we are examining the cultural, social, and historical factors that shape communication across different communities so that we don't only teach English as if there's only one correct way to speak and behave. Ultimately, the goal is for you to develop the awareness and skills to see how culture fundamentally impacts language learning and communication, and to bring that into your lesson choices, materials, and classroom interaction. If you can put in the chat what's really the one communication rule that you've noticed, that would be great. Like, the eye contact, silence, turn taking, or politeness, that would be great. So this course really aligns with our ITGL program learning outcomes. So at ITGL, we have 6 different program learning outcomes encompassing global-oriented leadership, global competency, research evidence, 21st century communication, AI and technology, and specialized expertise. I'm not going to details, but I'm going to talk a little bit about how our specific course outcome align with our program learning outcomes. So this slide breaks down what we'll actually do in the course, right? So our specific objectives and actions. First is the investigate part. So we'll look at real examples and research to draw conclusions about how intercultural communicative competence impacts global communities. So we are not treating culture as trivia, right? We are asking what changes in real interactions when people have different cultural expectations. And second is the describe part. Here you will compare and contrast cultures' role in language learning for different groups. For example, native speakers, heritage speakers, and people use English as a lingua franca in international contexts. And the goal is to notice how context changes what good communication looks like. And third part is the gather part. So you will practice finding, organizing, and interpreting information from multiple sources like articles, media, and classroom materials, and interaction data, focused on how culture is integrated into EFL teaching and what that integration looks like in practice. And finally is the evaluate part, right? This is where you make informed decisions. So based on in-depth reflection in our class or on real world communication about how to respond to cultural differences as a teacher and how you like to handle those misunderstandings. And these are really aligned with our program learning outcomes as well. So this really maps out our 15 weeks. So our class is a 15-week class, right? 15-week journey on 4 phases. So you can see how the course builds step by step from theory to practice to real world application. So phase one is foundations, which is really the weeks 1 and 2. We kind of establish the theoretical and pedagogical groundwork. We learn about our syllabus. We learn about what textbook we use. We learn about key terms and core frameworks and what it means to teach language with culture rather than as an add-on, right? So phase two, where we are right now at this stage, is the intercultural lens, which is weeks 3 to 8. So this is where we start applying cultural frameworks directly to language. Right now, we are looking at how culture shapes things like vocabulary choices. We're talking about grammar in context. We're talking about pragmatics. We're also talking a lot about the paralanguage, so like the nonverbal communication, the beyond language part. That is really important in our communication, intercultural communication. And phase three is the real world complexities, which is from weeks 5 to 12. Excuse me. Here we focus on the messy, authentic side of communication, right? So navigating assessments, cultural transitions, shifting identities, and what happens when communication breaks down, right? So those miscommunication, discomfort, and sometimes conflict and really how teachers can respond productively. And phase four, which is I'm really excited about, is really the synthesis and the research part. So this is where everything comes together in culminating projects. So students will present their projects, will write out their paper, will communicate, having mini lessons, like that part. So that you leave the course with something that you can actually use in teaching or professional context. So our course is on a 3-point scale. I know it's a little bit weird, but it will go to like 100% at the end, right? So we have the class participation part, which students really engage in discussion and communication in the classroom. We also have the content presentation, so students lead so read a paper, find a paper and read it and really summarize the paper and lead discussion on that paper and our course content too. And we also have the journal reflection. So I think there are several assignments for the journal reflection. So after reading our course content, students reflect on I will pose some questions and students reflect on their own journey and how communication really help us understand how to teach in TEFL context. And then we also have the mini lessons. So students will teach in our class like a teacher using the content that we learned in our course. Last but not least, I'm excited about is the research projects. So there will be 3 parts. So first one is a presentation, and then there will be a paper, and then most exciting part is that they will create something, right? So students in previous class, they have been doing like create an app for English language teaching. So right now, AI is really convenient and vibe coding is really trendy. So really nothing is impossible, right? So this slide also shows the typical class sequence. I will go pretty quick on this one. So a typical class, we start with opening and checking. We see if students have questions. We use like a quick prompt, a short example from real communication to start our conversation. Next is the instructor lecture and discussion. So typically I'll introduce some key concepts and frameworks, but it's not a one-way lecture, right? I do not talk nonstop. It's mostly like 10, 15 minutes lecture and engaging discussion and group activities. So after that, we shift into student-led content presentation, and this is where you and your classmates really bring in an article and help lead part of the conversation. The goal here is really to build confidence talking about culture in a evidence-based way. And finally, we end with a theory to practice activity. So our textbook we are using right now is really awesome because they provide those mini lessons at the end of each chapter. So we can look at how do we really teach culture. And I usually ask students to come up with their in groups, come up with their own mini lesson activity to help their students to achieve the goal and um, the goal and then the content on what we are really learning. Yeah, so I am really excited to step into the mini lesson part, which is the decoding intercultural communication part. And I'm so glad to have four students guest students joining us to help us facilitate and help us with discussion as well. So we have Mingsheng Ling, Jiawen Zhang, Yunling Li, and Hongsheng Zhang joining us today. Thank you so much. Okay, let's go into the mini lesson part. So today we are jumping into a topic that honestly affects every single one of us, probably every single day, which is intercultural communication. So how we talk and actually connecting people from different cultural backgrounds is more crucial now than ever, right? So let's get right into it. So you know that feeling, right? You say something and you think it's totally fine, totally normal, and then bam, the whole vibe shifts. So you get that weird pause, confused look, or the conversation just hits a wall. So I would like to have our guest student thinking about some, a conversation that get awkward, and then our audience you can also leave anything like the any situation or anything you can think of in the chat as well, and then we can get start from there. All right, so can we have our students kick a start in terms of what kind of experience you had in terms of conversation get awkward?
Uh, I can share two my personal experiences. So during my undergraduate years, when I first arrived in the United States, I was incredibly excited to chat with my American roommate for the very first time. And he asked me, "Oh, hi, how's it going?" I stopped, thought seriously for a moment, and replied, it's going well, thank you. How about you?" He was just laughed and said, "No, no, no. So it's just a greeting, like hi." I froze, thinking, so he wasn't really asking me how I was doing. And even more was when I instinctively took a step back, thinking he wanted to a handshake instead of a high five. He'd just been trying to high five me. And he immediately said, "Dude, come on, a high five." So the whole dome burst out laughing. But later I learned that Americans are super direct and open. Gestures like high fives and hugs are just friendly. Since then, I've become a pro at high fives and even indicate how's going with a wink. So it feels like I have finally blended in a little.
Thank you, Yunling, for sharing. I still remember that I really asked my back then when I was a PhD student, I really asked my classmates when someone said to you, "What's going on?" How do you respond?
Yes.
Yes, so thank you for sharing. All right, Jiawen, maybe.
Okay, sure. I want to share a story that I first came to Americans. Like small talk, I said to a girl like, "You are so pretty today. I love your outfit." She smiled and answered me like that. Yeah, I just threw this on, but I didn't get her meaning. I thought she didn't like my compliment, or maybe I had said something wrong. So I just searched in the internet and I realized that was a very normal, modest answer. So that moment made me realize that even a simple compliment can become awkward when people use language and social cues differently.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing, Jawan. And our two other guest students.
Yeah, well, so I want to share once my local friend asked me if I wanted more food. It was during a lunch break. And I said, no, I'm fine. But because in Chinese culture, people often refuse first to be polite, but then they really stopped offering food. And I was a little angry. So that was a small but funny cultural misunderstanding.
That's a great story. Thank you, Mingshen. All right, Hongshen, we cannot hear you. Hongshen, we cannot hear you. Okay, maybe while you're adjusting your sound, maybe we go to the next part, and then while you're once you're back, you can share your story on that. Okay. All right. Yes. Thank you so much for sharing those awkward moments. I had so many different awkward moments as well while I was learning, the culture in the United States. So from these examples, we can really see that a lot of the time that the answer isn't really about the words you used. So right behind every single conversation, there is this really invisible universal cultural programming. So it's our traditions, our values, our unspoken rules, and all of that stuff shapes how we hear things and how we react. And that's exactly what we are going to unpack today. Okay, so first things first, let's just bust a huge myth right now. So when we talk about culture, we're not just talking about what country you are from, right? So it goes really so much deeper than just a stamp in your password, in your passport. So here's a great way to think about it. Culture is a learned system. So you are not born with it. It's kind of like the operating system that gets downloaded into your mind by, our families or communities or society. And that system becomes the lens we use to make sense of the entire world and connect with other people. To get a really, get a handle on this, let's use a metaphor. Think of culture like an onion. And so to understand what's really going on in our communication, we have to peel back all these different layers that influence us. So we're gonna start from the outside and work our way in. So that big outermost layer, so those are the broad culture forces. So think about the nation you live in, right? The United States, Italy, China, right? So laws, different laws, right? It's history, it's dominant values. But it also includes things like huge online fan communities like, K-pop fan, or like, global professional network like LinkedIn phenomenon. And these big sweeping forces basically set the main stage for everybody inside them. Okay, so let's peel that layer back. So what's underneath are organizations and institutions. So like your job, you are a student, right? Your school, even a sports team, like my kids, a sports team, the gymnast team they're on, and you play for, soccer team as well. They all have their little mini cultures, right? So, thinking about my daughter who's on her gymnastic teams, I would never know those, different words like cartwheel if she was not on the team. So these are words they use in gymnastics. So yes, so they got their own jargon, so their own inside jokes, their own expectations for how you're supposed to act and talk. And then we then go even deeper. So next layer are all about our personal relationships. So think about your family or your absolute closest friends. So you have shared memories, secret handshakes, or even ways of talking that a total outsider just would not get. That's a powerful, deeply personal microculture right there. And finally, right in the core of the very onion is you. So your unique personality, your own personal history and experiences, all those outer layers have a huge impact. But at the end of the day, it's really you. You're the one that, making choices and interpreting everything. And when I was preparing those slides, my kid was asking me, "Oh, what are those layers and where I am?" I was like, "You are the core. You are the one that making decisions." It's just so funny moment. Okay, Hongshen, can you talk now or okay, you're still adjusting. Okay, that's totally fine. Um, All right, so now we are really, I asked our guest students to really having their cultural portraits. They can be themselves or they can be a person they really admire. So they want to talk about like their own culture or the person's culture. All right, let's start with Mingxin.
Okay, hi guys. So I want to use myself as an example to explain the four layers of culture using the onion metaphor. So first is the outer layer, is the broader social culture, including laws, history, and dominant values. So, I come from China, where education is highly valued and academic success is often seen as an important path to social mobility. And Chinese culture also emphasizes respect for authority, collective harmony, and strong family responsibility. These values influence how many students approach school and their future careers. And the middle layer includes the organizations and institutions that we interact in daily life. Currently, I'm a graduate student studying in the United States. My university is an important institution in my life. And in the classroom, I experience a different learning culture where students are encouraged to ask questions and participate in discussions. And outside the classroom, I also engage with student communities and some campus activities, which shape my social experiences. And the third layer is personal relationships. My closest relationships include my family and my friends. My family lives in China, so we yearly communicate through video calls or messages. Even though we are far apart, they still play an important role in supporting me emotionally. I also have friends from both China and other countries, and these friendships help me understand different perspectives and cultures. So for the last part, the core of the onion is the individual, which is me. My personality and experiences are shaped by both Chinese and American cultural environments. I see myself as someone who is curious, open to new ideas, and willing to learn from different cultures. Studying abroad, it has helped me become more independent and more aware of cultural differences. So, in summary, these four layers, from social values to institutions to relationships and finally the individual, altogether shaped who we are and how we understand the different culture. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mishan, for sharing your self's culture, like the onion, your cultural onion, right? I think you also kind of is a typical, US student from China kind of culture. So thank you for sharing. All right, so Jiawon is going to share something different.
Okay, hi everyone. So I'm going to represent someone from a culture I know pretty well. His name is Haruki Murakami. He is a Japanese novelist. I will use the anime model to explain culture components because if we only say he's Japanese, that's honestly too general. So I'm going to peel the onion for four parts. Okay, let's start with the outermost layer, the country level culture. So Murakami was born in Japan in 1949, so he grew up in a post-war society. One major hype people often talk about is wa. It's a Japanese word, which means people try to avoid open conflict and avoid standing out too much. So, and even when something isn't a written law, Japan also has strong rules like social expectations, like public politeness, order, and in many settings, seniority. So the outer layer shows the big picture, history plus dominant values plus the social rules that push people to fit in. But Murakami doesn't totally fit that stereotype, so we go deeper. Now we move to the middle layer, institutions and groups. A lot of Japanese men from his generation went into big corporations, but Murakami didn't. He studied at Waseda and later opened a jazz bar called Peter Cat. So instead of being shaped by corporate culture, his daily life was shaped by a different institution world, like music, books, and a more outer side lifestyle. He was also influenced a lot by Western literature. This layer shows that identity doesn't come only from the nation, it also comes from the schools, jobs, and insider groups you participate in. So, to understand his deepest motivation, we will still need to go one layer deeper. This layer is more private. It's about families and close relationships. So Murakami's wife Yoko has been his first reader for decades, which means she's part of his inner cycle and his creative life. And his father was a World War II veteran who rarely talked about the war, and Murakami also didn't ask. So there was a silence in the family. Also, as a child, he didn't have many close friends. I think that's why his novels often feel quiet and lonely, like there's always something unsaid. So this layer shows family microculture, where what you share, what you like, and how that shapes the way you see the world. And finally, we reach the core. So the last core is his unique personality, habits, and experiences. He loves jazz, and you can feel in his writing style, almost like improvisation inside a structure. He's also a serious runner, and he treats writing the same way, steady, disciplined, and long term. And overall, he often seems like someone who lives in between, not fully inside mainstream Japan, but not fully Western either. So in between feeling is basically his signature. So through the anime model, Murakami isn't just Japanese. He's shaped by national culture, the institutions he chose, his private relationships, and then his own personality at the core. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Xiaowen, for sharing. Sorry. From your sharing, we really get to know really deeper in terms of who is, gosh, I cannot pronounce his name, but who is the person, right? We really know a great deal now. And this is really like a typical activity we also do in our classroom as well. Basically, we will maybe I will divide students into groups. They may research some um, persons from different culture, and we can reunite and discuss about the person's culture. All right, so Yingling.
Oh, so hi everyone. I'd like to explain the onion model of culture by using my own experience with Chinese and Italian cultures. So the outlier includes laws, history, and social values. In Chinese culture, values such as collectivism and social harmony are very important. People often consider the needs of the group or family before individual preferences. So, when I started learning Italian during my undergraduate studies, my teacher from Italy shared many examples of Italian culture. One thing I found interesting is the strong regional identity in Italy. For example, northern Italy cities like Milano tends to be more industrial and fast-paced, but in contrast, places like Sicily have a more traditional lifestyle when family traditions and long weekend meals together are very important. These cultural values reflect Italy's history and regional diversity. The middle layer involves organizations and institutions that shape everyday life. In China, universities and student organizations play an important role in students' lives, influencing how we study, collaborate, and interact. I also had the opportunity to work at an international office at a Chinese university, where I helped support foreign teachers and organize cross-cultural activities. Through this experience, I noticed that differences in teaching styles. For example, Chinese teachers often emphasize structured planning and preparation, while some European teachers encourage more discussion and flexible classroom interaction. These differences reflect the educational cultures within different institutions. And in the deep layer focuses on personal relationships. In Chinese culture, relationships are often long-term and stable. Family responsibility and maintaining close friendships are very important. In Italy culture, I noticed that communication is often more expressive and emotional. My Italian teacher once told us that many families gather every day, every weekend to cook, eat, and talk together for hours. These traditions show how important family connections are in everyday life. And as the core of the onion is individual. For me, growing up in China shaped my intellectual cultural values. But learning Italian and interacting with people from different cultures gradually expanded my perspective. Through these experiences, I began to understand that cultural differences are not about right or wrong. They are simply different ways of understanding the world. So, in my case, both Chinese culture and my exploratory Italian culture have helped shape who I am today. So, in a personal conclusion, understanding culture is like peeling an onion. The deeper we go, from social values to institutions, relations, and personal experience, the better we can understand people and their cultural backgrounds.
Thank you so much, Yingling, for sharing. It's a very good example of, two culture in one person and how different culture may influence the individual as one. Yeah, thank you. Hongshan, are you able to talk?
Yes, I choose another device so maybe you can all can see can hear my voice. So I like to talk to us and to all the students. Instead of only explaining the cultural audience models, I like to use my own experience as a Chinese international student to show how these cultural layers appears in real life. So if we start from the outer context society, I grew up in places a very strong emphasis on education and academic achievement. From an early age, students are often told that studying hard is the main path to success. Because of that environment, most of us develop a strong sense of discipline and responsibility towards schools. Moving a bit closer to daily life, institutions such as schools and universities also shapes our cultural experience. So before coming to the United States, most of my educational experience were in a more structured systems where lectures and exams were central. So when I arrived here, I noticed that classrooms often encourage open discussion and active participation. So that difference made me rethink how learning can happen in different ways. So at a more personal level, relationships plays an important role in shaping how we understand culture. For me, my family and my close friends have always emphasized persistence and mutual support. So those relationships have shaped how I deal with challenges, especially when adapting to studies in another country. Finally, at the center of all the influences is the individual. My experience studying abroad has gradually shaped my identity. So interacting with people from different cultures has shaped me see both similarities and difference in how people think, learn, and communicate. So rather than seeing cultures as something fixed, this model reminds us that the culture is layered and constantly shaped by our experiences and interactions. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Hongshen, for sharing. Actually, Hongshen and I, with others as well, talked a lot about his experience going into a US high school, right? That I think is also shaping your culture as well. So thanks for sharing. All right, so I want to leave you with a question, right? So, really, which of your own cultural layers will you examine today? But before we leave, I also want to talk a little bit about how do we really develop our intercultural communicative competence. So that is really the ability to communicate effectively and appropriately with people from different cultural backgrounds. So like not just by using correct English, but by interpreting meaning, managing misunderstandings, and reflecting on perspectives, including our own. So here I'm showing you a very well-known framework that describes the 5 objectives of intercultural communicative competence. And you can think of these as 5 capacities we try to develop in learners. First one is the attitude, which is your curiosity and openness to different cultures. And then second one is the knowledge, which is really the understanding social groups and practices. Yeah. And then the third one is skills of interpreting and relating. This is really the ability to look at a message. So sometimes something like someone said, wrote, or did, and interpret it in context. And then also related to your own culture experiences. The fourth one is skills of discovery and interaction. And this is the ability to gain new cultural knowledge and apply it during real-time, real-world interaction. And the last but not least, which is the critical cultural awareness and political education. So this is the reflective ethnical piece, right? So evaluating perspectives critically based on explicit criteria and including our own as well. So we are going to do some interactive poll here. Our guest students, please join, and then audience, you can also join just by typing or you can scan the QR code or just typing the pollev.com/yes570 to join the poll. So I have 5 of these. So like from the 5 objectives we have from the model, right? So we are going to self-assess ourselves cultural capacities. We are still learning, right? But looking at how are you reacting and how you really thinking about yourself right now is more of a reflective process for ourselves too. Okay. Oh, we're having results in. So thank you so much for participating. All right. This is great. So I think right now we have half of you responded saying that they marked themselves as a 4, like above medium capacity in terms of the attitude to learn a different culture, which is great. Thank you for your openness and curiosity in different cultures. And we also have 1/4 of you saying that you have really high openness, which is awesome. I'm glad to see this. All right. So the second one is the knowledge part of culture. Wow. Hopefully it's not the for guest students here dominating it because you're learning about the culture right now, right? So I'm guessing that you are really having a lot of knowledge. But wow, see that students really, or audience as well, really having a medium to high level of knowledge of culture as well, which is awesome as well. All right. This is your skills of interpreting and relating different cultures, relating it to your own culture. Okay, this is awesome as well. So you are really thinking that you have above medium level skills in terms of interpreting different cultures. And I think our guest students here also like said a good example of like Yunling really talk about the Italian culture and then Jalvin talk about the Japanese culture as well, which is really kind of interpreting already, right? And then we can also relate it to our own culture. Very glad to see it. And skills of discovery and interaction. So your willingness really to discover new things and accept new things in an interactive way as well. Okay, so I think you are really adapting, right? Adapting to new discovery and in the real world interaction as well. I'm so glad to see most of you, the majority of you, are having high skills of discovery and interaction. And I will say it's totally fine if you're 1, right? Because we are really in the process of learning the intercultural competence too. And last but not least, which is the critical cultural awareness and political education. Okay, so we're having about medium or above medium level of critical cultural awareness. I think that this takes maybe the most time for me as well to learn, the culture, to develop my culture awareness. I've been here for over a decade. I'm still learning this. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing from our guest students as well as from our audience here today. Because of time, I really want you to wrap up. If time is not limited, in a real classroom, we will really talk and unpack about those ratings as well. So to wrap up this mini lesson, I want to leave you with this conclusion, right? The goal of second language learning is not to mimic a native speaker perfectly. Instead, the goal is to become what the slide calls here, the mediator between words and which is an intercultural speaker, right? So a mediator is someone who can observe, so what's happening in an interaction without even jumping to quick judgments. So you can relate perspectives, so like connecting their own norms with someone else's, and also communicate with critical awareness. So choosing language that fits the context while also noticing power, identity, and whose expectations are being prioritized here. So in the TEFL classroom, success isn't only about sounding native. We are kind of busting the myth as well. Like it's not about the native speaker sounding native. It's really about being able to negotiate meaning, repair misunderstandings, and participate more confidently, and respectfully.
Thank you, Dr. Shen, and to our guest students for all of the insights that you provided today. So to close our webinar, I am going to briefly cover just some application admissions requirements for our ITGL program because there is still time to apply for fall of 2026. So first and foremost, you need to submit the online application. You can find that on our website. In order to do that, you'll have to pay the $80 application fee. And then once you're done with the online application, for supplemental information, we need your personal resume highlighting any education experience, academic experience, or internships you may have, as well as the essay that is required. You'll find that prompt within the application as well. Then you'll need 2 letters of recommendation. These letters, one of them should be from an instructor or a professor who has known you academically and can really speak to your experiences in the classroom. The other letter can also be from an academic source, but it can be maybe from an internship or research experience you've had as well. Then, if you've studied inside of the United States, you'll need to submit your official transcript from college. Any college courses that you have taken would need an official transcript, not just somewhere where you've completed your degree. So if you've transferred or done some guest courses in different institutions, you'll need to submit all those transcripts. If you've completed your study outside of the United States, you'll need to submit an official course-by-course evaluation. And then in addition to that, our students who are not U.S. citizens or permanent residents need to submit the English language proficiency exam. There is a waiver process as well. You can find more information on whether or not you need to submit that exam score or submit a waiver on our website. But all of those components comprise a completed application to the ITGL program. So as I said, there's still time to apply, so you can apply now for fall of 2026. The official application deadline is April 30th. That is the end of the application process, meaning all of your application materials, including those letters of recommendation and transcripts, all need to be into us for a completed application before April 30th to be reviewed for the fall 2026 semester. Your offer of admission is ongoing, so we are continuing to review applications and release offers of admission. I know many of you, maybe some of you in our audience today already have an offer of admission to the ITGL program for fall of 2026. If that's you, congratulations. If you receive an offer of admission, your first deposit is due within 2 weeks of receiving your offer letter, and then all students must submit their final enrollment deposit by June 15th. So at this time, we do have maybe just 2 minutes left. If you have any questions for myself, for Dr. Chen, or any of our students, you can go ahead and put them in the chat. And then we'll put our contact information on the screen as well. So if we run out of time and cannot answer your questions, you still have time. And also the ability to contact myself. You'll see the admissions email address there, or you can contact Dr. Jennifer Adams. She is our director of the ITGL program. She's happy to answer any questions you might have. So we'll just leave it open for about 2 minutes if there are any questions from the chat or from the Q&A, and then we will close ITGL Class Preview Week. Any questions?
And if you have any questions, you can contact me as well. My email address is Yeshen, my name, @jhu.edu.
Oh, that's simple.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I don't see any questions. So thank you all so much for being here again. Thank you, Dr. Chen, and to all of our Shen and all of our ITGL students. I am so glad that you were here. And thank you to all of our participants, whether you joined today or our other class previews. It has been just a delight, and I've learned so much this week from our brilliant professors and students.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.